It's another early morning Sunday with Charles. Charles, I think our European viewers appreciate it. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, and thanks for accommodating my schedule, Jason. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Charles. I always appreciate speaking with you. And there's a load of crazy stuff going on. I think most people have been pretty focused for most of last week on Michael Cohen's absurd testimony in the already absurd trial. I think this week is going to be even more interesting because something a lot of people might have missed is that in Congress last week, and then subsequently all over the news, we've had Michael Cohen's former attorney, who interestingly has corroborated what I presume to be the most logical explanation for what's going on. Michael Cohen made this all up, and Trump knew nothing about it. I had a question for you, Charles, about finance that I'm not able to answer, and this has been sticking in my mind. It's a difficult question because it's going to have a lot of parameters that are sort of unknowable, but we've heard a lot about this HELOC loan that Michael Cohen got to pay, what's her name, to Stormy Daniels, the $130,000. And the thing that's weird to me is this ex-lawyer of Michael Cohen, he's come forward and said, that guy's name is Robert Costello. He's come forward and he's said that Cohen came to him and said that he was contacted by an attorney for Stormy Daniels who was going to sue Trump, alleging there had been an affair. And that Cohen told Costello that he didn't believe the allegations of the affair. But because it was going to be embarrassing to Melania, Cohen took it upon himself to resolve this without telling Trump, without telling his own wife. So this put Cohen in the situation of having to get some kind of a loan that wasn't going to reveal itself in any of the shared bank accounts that he had with his wife. So he goes and he gets this HELOC, which the question for you is, first of
You
all, I
there,
don't know exactly what a HELOC loan is.
Jason?
Yes? Hello? Charles, you got me? You got me? I'm here. You got me? Charles, can you hear me? We
We
have an
just lost
internet.
sound, Jason.
You should
Oh,
still be able to hear me.
I've got you. I've got you.
Got me back. So the two questions for you. I don't know exactly what a HELOC loan is, so I'd like you to address that for people like me who aren't sure what makes that different than a regular loan. And secondarily, it seems to me it's very common for sleazy people to get lawyers and then go to billionaires and make up a lie and say, I'm going to sue you because I want money and I hope I get a settlement. But $130,000 seems like a particularly low number to me for a hooker to go after a billionaire for, maybe $1 million, 500,000. Elon Musk settled something for 250,000. 130,000 sounds like a weird number. Sounds more to me like the number that would match the type of loan a person like Michael Cohen could get if he was restricting himself to hiding it from his own wife. Do you have any insight that could help us understand this $130,000 loan?
I do. So a HELOC, not a headlock, stands for Home Equity Line of Credit. And so that's a loan where typically a bank, and if you're dealing with a big bank, a private banker, would say, all right, Jason, listen, you've got a lot of equity in your house, your apartment, whatever. You either have a mortgage or you don't have a mortgage on it. We can give you a loan against the value of your equity. And it's the kind of thing where when there are boom times and the bank wants to do you a solid, they may be kind of flexible on what they say the value of the underlying asset is and the equity that you can borrow against in the asset in question. Typically, the loan is not a fixed rate loan. At least in the old days, it used to be a floating rate loan. But Cohen still is married, and at the time of this was married. And if he was taking out such a loan without informing his wife, that's sleazy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
right, I mean, because his wife in New York, his wife at this point would have a 50% interest in the equity of the asset, and ordinarily, if the asset in question is held in joint name, the bank would have an obligation to go to the wife and at least inform her of what is going on. So I maybe he had a property somehow that was in his own name. I believe his wife was or is independently wealthy. And I obviously, have no idea what the underlying finances of Michael Cohen and his family are. But it sounds to me like there's a very technical finance term. It's a bullshit story. and on the question of the $130,000 amount, typically the way this works is sleazeball lawyers, and there are many of them, are constantly going to rich people with a high profile like Trump and saying, listen, I'm aware of a situation that might be embarrassing to your client. And they know exactly how much it would take for Trump to hire counsel to defend against the lawsuit involving Stormy Daniels. And they pick a number that is basically cheaper for him to just pay that number and know that Stormy is gone than to endure the uncertainty that we now see. Remember, this agreement that was signed, I think Michael Cohen has to be he and Avenatti are among the worst lawyers that I've ever, heard of in recent history. That barring some members of Congress, particularly on the Democrat side.
Yeah, Goldman.
Dan Goldman. He's just, in theory, a credentialed and smart and wealthy guy, but he's one of these people who's decided that the ends justify the means. So back on Cohen, the thing that's really amazing to me, given the facts that are in the public domain, we know that the U.S. attorney, because this has publicly been disclosed in the past, that the U.S. attorney considered whether to take this matter up and to accuse Trump and or Cohen of a crime here, and the U.S. attorney declined. So at federal level, they looked at this body of evidence and they just said, "Listen, this is not something we need to do." We also know that the indictment, when it was written at the time, I'm not a lawyer, but I've seen a lot of legal documents, and I stayed at a Quality Inn. You look at the indictment, and it doesn't name a specific crime. And just on that alone, it should have failed a long time ago. The people who love the law and claim that it's a noble mission here in New York, where this matter, I think, is based, should have said to Alvin Bragg, "Listen, you're a fuck up. You can't do this. You can't even issue this thing." That this has been in the public domain for so long it's just such a stain on the legal profession in New York City, between this work and, in quotes, and the work of Letitia James and the work of the Eastern District, the Southern District, and other political operatives in New York City, state, and federal level. A clear case has been made by these shenanigans that there are many better places inside the United States of America to consider investing money and transacting business than New York City. So I think, unless, even if a jury now convicts Trump, which could happen, our city is so hopelessly corrupt, certainly on appeal, Trump will be vindicated. And certainly in the court of public opinion, Trump has already been vindicated. So this has been a massive loser for the Democrats and for Biden. And don't forget that we now have the spectacle of two trials. I think both are at federal level, involving Hunter Biden, and real actual evidence of what I would say is corruption. And I don't know all the different federal statutes that you could try to hit Joe Biden with, and Hunter and James and his extended family, for the pattern of hawking Biden official positions as senator, as vice president, as presidential candidate, and now as president of the United States. I don't know how the litany of crimes that you could assert Biden and his co-conspirators have been engaged in, and those who have been covering this up, is very, very long indeed. And so it's just watching this from thousands of miles away from America. I got to believe that people around the world are scratching their heads and saying, "What the hell has happened to the United States of America, a once great country under Barack Obama was fond of always talking about the arc of history. The arc of history, in theory, is ascending, but under Obama and Biden, it's an expert ski slope down to hell. And we
Yeah.
look at the damage that has occurred to our healthcare system under Obama, to our educational system under all these people, to our border under Biden, to our standing in the world under Biden. And we're seriously hanging our hat in New York City on a DA who, let's face it, if we looked at his track record, I'm going to guess that he actually didn't do very well at Trinity, at Harvard Law School, or wherever he went. We're going to hang our hats on this mess. It's pathetic.
To your point about hawking nonsense, Charles,
Is that his
BLM
name?
Greater New York founder Hawk Newsom was arrested after berating an officer at the NYPD officer's manslaughter hearing and telling this guy, "You a vagina." This is really sad because what it shows is even when this guy is creating a public disturbance, menacing, this is assault, by the way. When you read the statute, if someone puts you in imminent fear of bodily harm in New York, that's assault. And this guy's touching him and pushing him. There is no reason why he shouldn't have been immediately handcuffed, tased, and arrested right on the spot. Because every person who sees a video like this is emboldened to say, yeah, that's how you should behave around the cops. You should first break the law. Then when the cops try to arrest you, you should resist arrest and injure the cops and risk the cops' safety, risk the public safety. So I'm glad this guy has been arrested, but I have a feeling they're just going to give him $13 million and let him out of jail.
But again, the damage has been done.
Yeah.
Because New York used to be, pardon the phrase, a mecca, in a place where, every person in rural America and many in the smaller towns and cities across America would say, I'm going to go to New York City, and whether it's in fashion or in media, in finance, multinational companies, I'm going to go to New York City and make my fortune. And so you had a stream of talented people coming to the city, working hard, in some cases failing, in many cases doing really well. And the activity, the energy, the electricity that you saw in New York City, that's gone.
Totally.
The lever on the gigantic toilet bowl that is New York City has been pulled hard. And, unfortunately, the bowl's filled with flotsam, jetsam, and rats. This is really a tragedy. And I don't know if there's enough tidy bowl cleaner on the shelves to clean out New York City at this point. I mean, the damage has been done. And the real tragedy here is that smart people are going to look at this and say, yeah, Mr. X, Mrs. X can come in and claim they're going to clean the thing up the way Giuliani did, for example. But now look where it is. Giuliani cleaned up Dinkins' mess.
Right.
Bloomberg invested a lot of his personal money to sort of carry on the Giuliani tradition. And look what DeCrazio and the waxhead idiot and these various city council members and other people who've decided that New York City is the land of the get some free shit zone. Come illegally into our country. Yeah, yell at the cops. And I look at that and say, as I'm older, I don't want to get in a fight. I don't want to be near a fight. I have zero confidence that the police will do the right thing to tamp down the kind of danger that now is before us. I just noticed a worldwide alert for American citizens saying that as we enter Pride, which I think is in June, that there's apparently chatter on the internet that there could be, terrorist acts perpetrated against Americans involving Pride events. So that's something I think people who live in New York City should be especially concerned about. That we have Memorial Day coming up, which is a place when people in theory are gathering to honor our killed and wounded in too many wars around the world. But these are typically joyful events. People let their guard down. Oftentimes the police and the fire departments in local small communities, they're on parade during the day and they're focused on cookouts and this and that. We still have hostages after October 7th. And this is dingbat Joe Biden and his family. All they're trying to do is, their new show, we're closing in, they're cashing in. That's how the Biden family rolls. It's cash in on the dunderhead's political status.
Did you see this video, Charles, that they put out where people are saying it looks like Joe Biden is on drugs? To me, it looks like some amateur application of AI or visual effects where they took, kind of like a still picture of Joe and made him talk. There's a lot of apps where you can do that now. Just take a picture of somebody and it builds a 3D model of their head, and then you load in some dialogue and it makes it look like that person is talking. There's a new one that Microsoft just introduced. The public can't access it yet, but it's remarkable, Charles, and it looks like the video they produced of Joe Biden is a less good version of this technology than this remarkable Microsoft technology. But again, I think some idiotic 30-year-old genius in the media department thinks, hey, this is how we can solve the issue of Joe Biden not being able to speak. Oh, yeah, and one other thing I wanted to tell you about AI. So Joe Biden is saying, hey, no audience for this debate. One of the things that this Microsoft, it would blow your mind to see it, Charles. We could literally just take any picture of you from the internet or anybody and use it in this Microsoft thing. It makes you blink, look around. It can interpret from the dialogue how your demeanor is. In the demo, they showed changing it from face to face, from person to person. I normally have a fairly easy time discerning when a video is made using visual effects or AI. This latest technology is very difficult to tell. And it works in real time, 170 milliseconds from the time something is said until this thing generates the face. So you could use it for live streaming. Maybe that's why Joe doesn't want an audience there. The level of technological trickery, stuff that we'll know about in 2, 3, 5 years, they're using right now.
Yeah, again, I mean, this is a lot of Democrats, too many Democrats have Biden buyer's remorse. And the fundamental trade in 2024 is a very different trade than the trade in 2020. Back then, if we accept the results of the election for a second, and let's just put, wrapping around that box and say we accept it for the moment, the constituencies that in theory came out to vote for Biden and get him across the line, those core constituencies, whether it's left-leaning progressives on the Middle East, whether it's blacks, whether it's Hispanics, frankly, whether it's women, suburban women, I don't think those people are going to vote for Biden, and they're certainly not going to vote for hapless hair ass. I mean, that person is just, so obviously hopeless at this point to get across the line as a possible putative leading Democratic presidential candidate in 2028. Both brands are tarnished beyond repair.
Yeah.
I think the political operatives understand that. There has to be gamesmanship afoot now. They have to be thinking about some wacky plan to just shoehorn somebody else in. But Joe Biden is not going to be the president of the United States. He's not going to be sworn in on January 20th, 2025, nor is Kamala Harris going to be vice president, in my opinion, knowing what we know right now.
Yeah, and I don't even think he's going to participate in that debate that he's promised to participate in. There'll be shenanigans and nonsense between now and then. I know you're not a big hip-hop fan, Charles, but this is a story that spans...
New surveillance footage obtained...
subject matter. But this is interesting that this comes out right now and is being broadcast all over the place. It's often interesting to see what CNN and some of these other channels. This is obviously a violent video of P. Diddy beating up his I don't know if he has kids with this woman or what, but this is Cassie. Insane, brutal video of him kicking and beating this woman and dragging her through the hallway. When you're talking about, how chaos and whatever, this seems to be a component of that. People have been speculating that this video would have been obtained in the raid of P. Diddy's house because he had paid the hotel, apparently, to stifle this video. And suddenly now it's coming out, not from proceedings in court. This was leaked by somebody, so somebody has a reason for wanting the public to be thinking about and looking at P. Diddy right now.
Well, I got a question for you. I happen to be big fan of navy blue and dark green towels. I know that's a little tidbit that nobody perhaps really needs to know. But, isn't it racist for P. Diddy to be using a white towel? I mean, why is he using a dark towel?
Exactly. But
Like
yeah,
me.
it's right. There's a lot of weird things happening right now. And I mean, I don't know. I'm still very interested in this person, Robert Costello. He's got testimony that seems like would permanently blow away this story. I was listening to a legal analysis where I think it was Greg Jarrett said that he's learned from his legal career that when you're winning, sit down. He was asked if he thinks the Trump defense team will call this guy, Robert Costello, as a witness, because of course tomorrow there's going to be more cross-examination of Michael Cohen. And we don't really know. I get what he's saying when you're ahead, and it seems like after this testimony was revealed where Michael Cohen was tripped up on the stand. This is another thing, that we don't get to see video cameras inside this courtroom. Even though this is New York State Court, it's at the judge's discretion. I personally feel judges have far too much discretion, and even in areas where, how does this affect the proper adjudication of the case? It's a public proceeding. The public should be able to see it, and we should be able to see the nuance of not just a transcript. This is an issue with Joe Biden as well. They're not exerting executive privilege over the content of the interview with Robert Hur, just over the recording of it, because it's going to expose Joe Biden's delivery, his demeanor, give us all this subtle input into his competence, which they're obviously concerned about, the same thing the judge is concerned about the public seeing within the courtroom.
Well, I would say, actually, I have a slightly different slant on the Hur thing. I mean, if it is the case, I turn the Justice Department's argument on its head. If it's the case that the transcript is already in the public domain, then how can it be damaging at all to release the audio recording if the audio recording is a fair transcript? I mean, if the transcript is a fair version of the audio recording, how is the president harmed? The words are already in the public domain. You can't. You're right. I mean,
that's the argument they're making.
No, I'm saying for the Justice Department argument is very weak. The audio cannot be right. I mean, you've already given us the words. You have to give us the audio.
Jim Jordan is making the argument that you are making. It makes no sense, obviously, for the Justice Department to say this, in the same way that it makes no sense for an honest court to say you can't see what we're doing in here. The only reason to do that in 2024, because the cameras can be, it's not like there's a lot of lights in there and it's making it more difficult. You could have hidden cameras in the room that would not obstruct the proceedings at all, and everybody could see and hear every single thing going on in there, including the reaction of the jury, or we don't want to see the jury on video, but the point is, we're now hearing over the weekend from people who were in that courtroom that George Conway put his head in his hands when Michael Cohen revealed that this 90-second phone call was not him calling Trump. The whole thing that they've been trying to put together is that Trump ran the Trump organization and his presidency like a mafia family, where he didn't specifically tell Michael Cohen things to do, but Michael Cohen would call him and say, it's done. And Trump would say, okay, and they're talking about the payment to Stormy Daniels. But this critical phone call, this 90-second phone call that Cohen had said previously was to Trump to confirm the payment and confirming Trump's knowledge of this. Turns out that wasn't what it was. There was a text transcript that corresponded to the phone calls revealing that it was a phone call to Trump's security team about some harassing phone calls Cohen was getting. So he was exploded on the stand, Perry Mason style, and people who've been watching congressional proceedings or the news that's been interviewing Robert Costello have heard this other explosive part of the story, while we've got liars, we should say, CNN and some of the others have been left with no excuse. They have to admit this case has fallen apart. And similarly, I think there's going to be at least one juror there who will be sensible enough to say, look, you know what, I hate Trump, but this is ridiculous, and I need to live in this country also, so we got to have some semblance of justice, and I can't convict this guy for something that's obviously not been done. But Charles, we're out of time here, and we're going to continue in the First Amendment Forum right now, so just take us out with a closing comment, and then we'll be right back in 5 minutes for people to join us on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and Subscribestar and Patreon. What else are we going to cover today, Charles?
Well, a lot more, but I mean, I think Michael Cohen is it's an open question. Who's the worst lawyer, Mike Lavinetti or Michael Cohen? And at this stage, or Fannie Willis for that matter, or Alvin Bragg. I mean, this is a cacophony of numbskulls and a disgrace to the legal profession. And I don't think the legal profession can purify itself. I think the voters have to now step up and demand reform.
Yeah. Absolutely. And this is from today. Trump prosecutor's case is dead and cannot be revived. Yeah, Robert Costello is getting quite a lot of airtime. He's an impressive guy. I encourage people to seek out his congressional testimony and some of these interviews that he's been doing. Very credible, former New York prosecutor, actually from the Southern District. That's how he knows Rudy Giuliani, because he was a prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. Stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back. There's a lot more to discuss about this. And thanks to everybody who's sponsored